in its small hamlet called Boyceville, exactly 12 years ago to this day. There was a 22-year-old young man named Thomas Brazilian who resided on Upper Boyceville Road. Thomas lived with his mother, but was home alone. He began to suffer from a routine asthma attack. At that time, Thomas dialed 911. A dispatch to the volunteer Olive ambulance was put out. Then a second dispatch, followed by a third dispatch with a mutual aid call for Mobile Life. Mobile Life called, responding with an extended ETA due to still being at Kingston Hospital, dropping off a patient they already had on board. Because no other Mobile Life units were available, as we all know, a normal trip from Boyceville to Kingston is approximately 25 minutes on a good day without traffic. Needless to say, this young man, Thomas Brazilian, was in dire need of medical emergency care, but had to wait for his local ambulance service to not answer up, therefore being pushed to wait for an ambulance coming from 25-30 minutes away. Sadly, Thomas Brazilian's medical condition waits for no one. So upon the arrival of Mobile Life ambulance, this 22-year-old young man laid in front of them, lifeless. They were too late. This is an example of what happens when you underestimate your necessity of your emergency medical services. This is what happens when you think that saving money is more significant than that one time you might actually need an ambulance, a police officer, or a fire department, even if it's for a medical condition you've lived with and have been able to keep under control your whole life, or your property you've owned or has been in your family for half a century or longer is now being burglarized or trespassers are roaming around on it. Or when you decide to burn some brush for the 100th plus time on your own property, but a gust of wind takes it and it is no longer a burn within your control. So while I fully understand, that trying to figure out a budget that is cost effective for the town, and its residents is a necessity and even commendable. I sincerely, though, disagree with trying to cut from a budget that is there to help protect and keep safe the very residents who live in it. The budget is a concern, and I'm not contesting that. I'm saying my biggest concern is the safety and well-being of a town I've grown up in and love with a passion beyond the explanation of words. Thank you guys for your time, and if you have any questions about that story, it's very easily looked up. That happened. It was literally my first year on the ambulance squad. I sat back wondering why we couldn't go because we were 10 minutes away from that call. And the fact is that there are contractual agreements. We all know a contract is binding. They have a contract for Mobile Life. The young man died because care was coming from farther away than it needed to be. My point behind that is that we have the second largest district in the state of New York that our ambulance covers. And the fact that we cover beyond 90% of our calls, including our backup calls when a rig's already out, is just tremendous in itself, okay? We are working with what we have, which is clearly not enough, but you know what? We're all dedicated. We all love this town. We love the residents in it, and we love servicing the community that we all grew up in or have a strong tie to. So I urge you, while you look for your own answers in cutting the budget, you might want to steer clear of the one that actually keeps you guys safe and protected, not just from us having to come when things go wrong, but from the fire department, from the police officers, everybody. We are all on the same team of keeping this community safe and keeping this community going when it needs to have extra coverage. We never say no, okay? So right now, there's supposed to be a ton of overtime that should be going out. But we are working in good faith because our contract states that we should be paying somebody from 1 to 9 to have a 3-man crew at all times. But to help save the town money, we try to limit that and we cover when we can, and when we cannot, we use 2-man crews. And that itself could be detrimental as well. Because when you have a 3-man crew and one call drops, at the very least, you have one provider who stays behind and can at least administer treatment if need be when a second call drops, opposed to having a 2-man crew driving a half an hour in each direction to a hospital, being out of service for over an hour, and a second call dropping, and somebody has a routine asthma attack, and guess what happens? You show up, they're lifeless, we've now lost a general member and a beloved one in our own community. So I urge you guys, look for answers, but I wouldn't do it when it comes to any of the emergency service departments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments? Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. With that, we will open up the special meeting section of the town board. I'd like to read Resolution 120-19, adopting Town of Shandaken Local Law Number 2 of 2019, a local law to override the tax levy limit established in General Municipal Law, Section 3C. Whereas the Town of Shandaken foresees the necessity to exceed the tax levy limit established in General Municipal Law, Section 3C, whereas the Town of Shandaken Town Board held a public hearing on Wednesday, October 23rd at 1 p.m. at the Shandaken Town Hall to hear all those in favor and against the adoption of said law in accordance with General Municipal Law, and therefore be it resolved that the Town of Shandaken Town Board does hereby adopt Local Law Number 2 of 2019 in order to allow the town to exceed the tax levy limit imposed for the 2020 fiscal year budget for the Town of Shandaken and move its adoption.
Second.
Board Member Discipline?
I have to vote no. It's been too many years that we have exceeded this tax cap. This isn't against the police or the ambulance, but I think there are places in the budget that need to be looked at and whittled down. So no.
Okay. So this puts us in a quandary because we're going to have to discuss. I'd love to hear what your solutions are for bringing us under the tax cap. One, because we're required to pass this law and adopt it in order to exceed it, unless you have figures that can help us get underneath this. We have to solve this right now. This law requires that 60% of the board adopts this law. Without the other board members here, we're the 60%.
Well,
So let's hear it.
I don't have those, I didn't look over this budget to whittle it down today. This isn't the budget hearing, this
So-
is a
so wait, so
hearing
you're saying
on
you
the
made
2%
comments.
tax cap.
But you made comments about the budget,
Yeah,
about departments within the budget,
yeah.
saying that you felt there were ways to save within the budget, but now you're telling us today that you haven't had time to go through the budget or look at the budget to know where cuts can be made.
Well, I don't have them written down, I don't have them, I wasn't asked to bring those comments here today. I was asked to vote on this today.
Again, you're a town board member.
Again, I am.
At every time I send out resolutions for every board meeting, I ask if you have any comments, questions, any concerns. If you'd like to raise them, you can raise them. As a board member sitting here as a public body in front of the public, you can have, and you have the right to speak up at a board meeting concerning any issues or concerns you would have. So again, I'm going to ask, what do you feel are savings we can find within the budget?
Yep, you want to come back in an hour? I'll come back in an hour and we'll do this, continue this with my cutting the budget.
Why
Bring
do
it
you
down.
need an hour? I don't understand. If you don't. These gentlemen and ladies are here responding to a comment that you made 2 days ago.
Yeah. I felt there was too much overtime in the ambulance budget. We were over $100,000 in the ambulance budget last year, mostly due to overtime. And yes, I understand that finding help is difficult, and because of that, we were covering shifts with overtime. There are other ways. There are putting more ads in the paper.
But we're not getting people to come. This is what we're saying. That there's Woodstock put out an ad 2 years ago, Rich, was it? Looking for paramedics. and starting rate is $25 an hour. We're currently paying, and we actually had a meeting, I think it was this past March, to try to increase the rate for the paramedics to try to entice more people here. We raised the rate from 17 and change or whatever it was to 19 and change, and still are having difficulty attracting more people. So the advertisements are out there, the people know that they're there, but we're not paying near the same amounts that's attracting other local professionals to their agencies. And Woodstock, from what I understand, was still having difficulty at the $25 an hour rate at attracting people. So again, even if we increase the rate dramatically, I mean dramatically, that budget would increase even more so than it's increasing currently. So I'd like to know what budget lines, there's no contractual lines that are increasing throughout the budget. Everything is a wage increase. And if you want to tell the ladies in the back there that are making, again, I was in Kingston the other day, and I see signs to start working at McDonald's at $12.75 an hour. There's ladies in this room that are working and handling $5 million. Oh, they're all leaving now. There's ladies working in this room and in this town hall and in offices and in other departments that are barely making the minimum wage and are just above it. They're not yet making the $12.75. So if you can find other lines that can be cut, please expound on it. It's clearly, I give a comparative budget so you can see what lines are increasing and how they're increasing. I give you a breakdown every year. The numbers are right there, black and white in front of you to tell you what those increases are. And I'd like to know where we're making a cut. In office equipment, vehicle expenditures, I'm not sure what line increase you're seeing outside of these people making a living wage. So please, if you can find it, I don't see why you need an hour. You've had this budget for almost a month now.
I'll be back in an hour.
Wait, before you leave, can I just add to that, Rob, please? Look, Pete, the fact is, we as an ambulance squad have been acting in good faith and technically, just don't cut me off, and technically allowing you to save money on this overtime that you're complaining about. Because as I stated, our contract specifically states we are to man a 3-man crew 24/7, okay? It specifically states it. But with Rich and Rob discussing it and coming back to us, we agreed that on certain days of the week, the ones that we found to be less busy at certain hours, to cut back on one person, okay? Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, and we have to pay 2 extra members overtime to come in and run it back and forth. But my point to you is, you can put 1,000 ads a week in every paper across the country, and the fact is, you're not going to entice anybody to come up to this small hamlet and work for penny change on the dollar to cover this town for a couple reasons. One, because a lot of people in this field like what they do because of the actual job itself. They don't have the same ties that we do to this community, where we are willing to take a loss in pay to work here. They're not. That's why they don't come. Because they can make $15+ an hour doing what I do to cover Kingston, run 3 times the amount of calls that I run, and then on top of that, get given overtime and not have a town councilman complain about it. That's the difference, is they're getting paid more, they're also doing more as far as call volumes, but they're doing the same job I'm doing, except they don't have the same ties to their community that I do.
Listen, I apologize for mentioning the police and the ambulance as a place to cut this budget. But the budget, this is a meeting about the 2% tax cap. And this budget needs to come down at some point. 90% of the towns meet the 2% tax cap.
Okay.
Our supervisor
I
is
understand
trying,
that.
but he isn't getting there.
So my only response to that, from here on out, and I won't go into any further detail, is your next apology can be to the family member or the person in this community that ends up suffering because of what you want to try and trim off from your emergency departments, whether that be the alley that you decide to go down or not. The fact is, if one person in this community suffers from a budget cut that you make to any of the emergency departments, then you're gonna owe one of them an apology to the public, not to me.
With all the money, even if you get the full budget, with all that money, you don't know that you're down in Kingston with one run and somebody has a heart attack, nobody could get to them. So, maybe a paramedic could, but you still can't get them to the hospital because there isn't an ambulance.
Difference being you take 100,000 out of our budget.
It isn't out of your budget. Nobody was taking it out of the
The
budget.
proposal of Ray that has been tossed around is for 100,000 out of our budget, out of the EMS budget.
Nobody talked about taking the
You're talking,
100,000
you're
out.
talking about cutting money from 2 of your essential services in this town,
Nobody talked about that.
okay? Please let me speak.
Okay.
What you need to keep in mind, okay, these guys wear the badge. They're the ones that are gonna defend you.
Yeah.
We wear the Star Light. We've been to your house.
Yeah.
We've helped your family. You wore the uniform at one point.
Yeah.
You know the struggles that we go through. You know the hours of training that we have to go through. You know what it's like to be standing up on the mountain in the middle of a blizzard searching for somebody lost. You're losing touch with the actual reason why we're here in EMS. Nobody is in EMS to make money because you don't. We know that.
I know.
But we are dealing with equipment that should have been replaced 10 years ago. We are dealing with substandard equipment, and we are still doing one of the best jobs as far as agencies go in this county. I have been in EMS for 30 some odd years, and let me tell you something. Some of the best people I've ever worked with are here in Shandaken, and we're also the lowest paid. You're talking about making cuts to agencies that this town needs to take care of the residents, to take care of the people that come through to go skiing or to go hiking. You're talking about you need to trim the fat somewhere, but you can't say on your own budget where you want to trim the fat. How can you sit there and say you need to trim the fat? You're not going to approve the levy and not be able to sit there and say, Rob, this is where we can trim the fat. This is what needs to come down. You are giving the impression as a town council person that you are against emergency services.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't
That is
have
the-
that impression.
that is
No, you
Right.
gave it
No,
though. The
I
very
didn't say
first
that.
answer you gave to Rob was EMS. That was your first response, and that's ridiculous. You used to work with us.
So, there wasn't any, I didn't have any response. This was from, I guess, came from the forum on Monday night.
Right, no, when you,
So, but-
when you said to him, okay, let's discuss it right now, his very first response, other than, I don't have the figures in
All I
front of
was
me,
talking about was
was,
overtime hours.
but it's still us.
Controlling overtime. That's, and in a bit,
And
as
that
a
comes
business
at the
standpoint,
cost of
as
the
a
cost of the
business
health
standpoint.
of the residents of this town. That's my point. You knock down overtime, you can cost somebody their life. You figure out what's more important.
Peter, go ahead.
As a business standpoint, my only thought is keeping taxes down and keeping overtime.
And as a
Control.
humane standpoint,
All right,
my only point is
let-
the life
Ernie,
of
please
the
let him
community
say
members in this town.
Yeah, this isn't a public forum about the ambulance or the police. You know, you're a big part of this budget, but it's not the only part.
Okay, I'm gonna make a proposal, because I'll give you the time, I'm not coming back in an hour. We need to pass this law in order to exceed it. I will say that, and Joyce, you can duly note that Mr. DeSclafani, if he could, please vote in favor of allowing us to exceed the tax cap. When we go to the public hearing, or you've got some numbers that you want to throw at us and say we can cut, then I will absolutely applaud you for finding those cuts. I'm telling you that we need to adopt this law in order to allow us to exceed the tax cap. Now, if you can find a way to get us under the tax cap, kudos. And I would certainly appreciate that.
Can I just ask a question of clarification? So this is merely to exceed the tax cap if we have to.
Correct.
So we still need, as a town, you as a town board, you still need to vote on the budget.
Budget.
The
Correct.
official budget of 2020.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is just to allow us,
So-
in case we need to exceed, and as it's proposed right now,
Correct.
it looks like we're
So
going to exceed.
ultimately, you collectively as a town board, you pass this law, correct, tonight, and then hopefully you get together and work together.
Well, what
Come up with
happened?
a reasonable solution. And then, right, and 2 board members not showing up to a very important
Yeah.
meeting is just absolutely ridiculous and dereliction of duties. Pete, I like you, I elected you, but you've had over a month to get these figures together. And then you make statements like lack of fiscal responsibility.
I apologize.
Highly
Those were
grossly over budget.
those were private conversations.
Private, you apparently said it in a public forum.
TV.
You're on TV saying it.
And shame on me for not
Not
watching.
not all of those words were used publicly.
Okay. Okay.
So the public
Then
hearing
my
on the
apologies.
budget.
However, I think for the benefit of the town here, let's move on to the next step. Just vote yes and then come back with some cuts. Talk to me about my budget, that's all I'm asking.
Talk to me about mine.
Okay.
I will make time for you any day or night
Okay.
to talk about my
Agreed.
budget.
So the reason to do this today is to pass the law in
Correct.
case, let's put it this way, most likely we will have to, right? But in case we do, we have to have this passed within a certain time before that, I believe.
Yep. And I
So,
will note that
yeah.
when they first did the tax cap, we actually did adopt the law, and it ended up being much lower than the tax cap itself. So it's just a record of what you do. Other towns do this too, I'm telling you, they adopt the
You're
law
90%
in case they're going to exceed.
So
And I don't agree with the 90% of towns stay within the tax cap, that's not a true.
That's not accurate.
It's not
The,
a,
I work in every town throughout this county, that is not accurate.
The public hearing on the budget will be Wednesday, November 6th at 6:30, preceding our regular meeting, which will be the day after election. This meeting is not being telecast live right now because of difficulties with the antiquated system, but it will be recast tomorrow or, when Helen puts it on. So everybody will know about the public hearing, of course, and we did announce that in all our legal notices. So,
so
you want to
Okay.
revoke?
Kevin has
That we will,
a verbiage change here he'd like to propose.
Oh, that's
So,
okay. Can I read it?
yeah.
So the third paragraph, therefore be it resolved, the town of Shandaken Town Board does hereby adopt local law number 2 of 2019 in case we need to allow the town to exceed the tax levy limit imposed for the 2020 fiscal year budget in the town of Shandaken. And move its adoption.
second.
Okay, so do you want me to change that wording? Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
roll call.
In case we need to exceed the tax limit.
Kevin,
That's what. Okay, so DeSclafani,
Yes.
Van Barton,
Yes?
Supervisor Stanley?
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
One other order of business. Apparently, other than Japanese knotweed and emerald ash borer, we now have a new invasive species that's coming into the Catskills called jetbee, which I've never heard of before. Apparently, it has been located at the Shandaken Cemetery, and I was contacted by a member of this Trillium Invasive Species Company that's working with the Catskill Center for Conservation Development and the DEC, and trying to figure out a way to eradicate this pest. And so we have to have a contract. It's no cost to the town. It's being paid for through the Catskill Center as a pilot program for trying to keep this at bay. So I would ask, I have resolution 12119, authorizing the supervisor to enter into contract for pilot invasive species program. Whereas the town of Shandaken has been notified that an invasive species of plant named jetweed has been identified on one of the town-managed properties. Whereas the town of Shandaken has been offered to be a pilot location to try and eradicate this plant before it continues to spread further throughout the town and Catskills. And whereas the town is being offered a contract at no charge with Trillium Invasive Species Management, Inc., located at 111 Horsenden Road, Suite 1, New Paltz, New York, 12561. Therefore, be it resolved, the town of Shandaken Town Board does hereby authorize the town supervisor to enter into this contract to work toward eradication of this invasive species at town property located along Route 28, known as the town of Shandaken Cemetery, and move its adoption.
Second.
Board Member DeSclafani,
Yes.
Board Member Van Barton?
Yes.
Supervisor Stanley?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, folks. With that, I'll entertain a motion to close the meeting.
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you. Be safe and happy Halloween.